is work because I'm in it. I'm always a student. I'm a student first before a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think many times people who do the type of work that I do, they can get caught up in what they think they know,
Yeah.
that they stop growing.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people my life is the book that I wrote, right? My life is the workshops that I facilitate.
Mm-hmm.
I can only do it because I'm living it.
Yeah.
I can only do it because I'm aware
Mm-hmm.
and in constant growth, and questioning about myself.
And that's how people relate to you, because you are able to draw upon all your experience and be like, this is why I can tell you this, because I went through it, and here's my experiences, and here's my story. So that's why everyone can step into it and be like, oh, I understand, because I felt the same way.
Yeah.
You know?
How's the book? Are you working on the book? What's happening?
It's been working on in my head.
Okay, that's fine. That's the first place for it to start.
Yeah. And I've come to a beautiful place where I can see it more in my head now, because now I see it in like an art book, essay, poems, quotes, all of it. So I see it more now. So I think I was like envisioning it where I started, where I am now, where I started, where I was before. And it might be interesting to work backwards. Be like, okay, because literally, like I said, like I feel like I woke up at 40. So technically that might be interesting to step into it at 40, and here's what happened. And
because you were completely numb and asleep to everything before that.
Completely numb, depressed, and just in my own little, like, I don't know what you call it, asylum, prison, you know what I mean? So it might be interesting to start it at 40 and then bring people into that journey of all the evolutions and trials and tribulations of what I went through. And we'll take you through it, through the art, through the stories, through the writings and all of that. So I'm starting to formulate it more. So I'm just gonna have to start doing page by page and start posting it on my wall and doing it like kind of like a timeline. And then each page will be a piece of paper that I can put on my wall, so I can move it around as I need to, and do like little pieces of art. Like maybe each piece of art is whatever size book I want to do. It's either a square or an 8.5 by 11. So I would design each one as a painting, as words, and place it on the wall.
That's really cool. I mean, immediately started like seeing different titles. When you said you woke up at 6, and you woke up at 46, you woke up at 40 and now you're 46.
Yeah. So
and it's almost like birthed at 40, or you know what I mean? Like birthed at 40, 6 years at 46, right? Just that play on the idea that this was my chronological age, but this is like my emotional, spiritual age.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like when I posted the podcast with Jordan, originally I put it like hiding in plain sight, spelled the regular way. But then I went back and like for other ones, I changed it to pain. So hiding in pain sight. Wow. Instead of plain sight. Yeah. So I changed it and put plain to pain, because nobody would know, the struggles I was going through, because I had created this image where no one would be able to tell that I had issues at home. So,
that's going to free a whole lot of people, man. That's what I love.
Yeah.
That's what I love. There are women that need to hear that you don't have to hide anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
The hiding is only what makes it more traumatic.
Yeah. And it's like such a weight on you to hide from anything. Anybody who's hiding any sort of story, any sort of addiction, or whatever it is, it's that hiding and feeling like you have to cover up everything and getting judged by people. But really, it's really all in your head. Like you've just created this giant story that is like so encompassing that I can't wait to write it, because I feel like maybe that will like free me from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing is that, like I told you before in our previous podcast, is that I want to be able to tell the story and not cry. And so when I was talking to Jordan, I was able to tell it And there was only like maybe 1 or 2 tears that was like welling up, but I was able to contain myself and continue on with the stories, that I didn't fully go into that like ugly cry. So I was like, oh, I did it.
I'm getting there.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Yeah. And the beauty of, even the beauty of allowing yourself to cry, but knowing you're not attached to it.
Yeah.
That the tears could actually be tears of freedom and not tears of connection to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But more so the tears of, man, look how far I've come.
Yeah. That's what I'm,
And that's worth getting emotional about.
that's where I'm trying to get to. Like there was another podcast, I think it was a more religious one, where she was telling the story of her abuse. And what I loved about it is that when she told it, she like flipped it. So she'll tell you the story and it sounds horrendous, but then she'll be like, you know what? I'm telling you this story because this is what I want to do with it. I want to be able to come here and help you and be able to give you the freedom to understand that you can get over it too, by me telling you this horrible story and how like crazy it is. Cause like, it's just ridiculous, the shit that I'm gonna be able to tell in this story. Like it's unfathomable of the ridiculous of it. That only reason why I'm telling it, so other people will be able to get through their trials and tribulations as well.
And I, to your point, I did probably about 10 years ago, I did some transformational work on myself. And one of the workshops that I took,
was it 6 years ago? When you were 40?
When I was 40, shucks. This one, I think I might have been 30, 34 maybe. But it was crazy because it was about secrets. To your point, the whole one of the sessions was about the secrets we hold and how they imprison us.
Yes.
Emotionally, mentally, and even physically.
Yes, hugely physically too. Like I made myself sick. Made myself literally sick. And you can see it in your body. Like I was turning into my mom because my mom would hold in all of her stress. So all of it would be like on the shoulders, the back, in the arms, like in the face. Like I was turning into her. And I looked like her. And I was like, oh my God, like I cannot die like this. Looking like I'm literally living her life.
Yeah.
Her generational traumas has transcended into me, and I'm living it, and I'm gonna die. Like I don't want to die unhappy. Like I had to do that.
Yeah, it was funny you say that, because for me, it was that awakening. It was that awakening that like family trauma gets passed through our DNA. And if we don't kind of catch it, make ourselves aware of it and allow it to kind of like breathe it out and then let it go, it passes in our DNA to our children.
It really does, because there's a lot of scientific information out there that the fear that you feel, it gets transcended past 2 generations.
Oh yeah. There's a I don't know if I probably said this in one of I might have said this in one of our previous conversations. Dr. Joy Leary, that's her old name, but she's a psychologist, and I think her new name is O'Grady. I can't remember, but her previous work is in post-traumatic slave syndrome, and how the trauma from slavery has been passed down generations to generations. And she gives examples of it. She gives the examples of the mothers in the grocery store. Like a Black mother in the grocery store is very protective of her kids, right? You don't go far, you don't leave, you don't go down the aisle. And if you do, they're like repercussions, right? You're either going to get a spanking, you're going to get reprimanded. And she linked it all the way back to like on the plantation, when the slave master would come by on a horse and see her son or her daughter. And she knows what they're looking at those kids for, right? He's either looking to sell that son to see if he's physically strapping, or he's looking at the daughter to potentially bed her, you know what I mean? Or have sex with her, rape her. Let's call it what it was.
It was rape. Yeah.
It was rape. And how that mother would then respond, like, oh, no, master, no, he no good, or she's no good, and would kind of put the kids down to this person in hopes that he would leave them alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now that daughter grows up seeing how her mom responded. And that daughter now rears her children, not realizing that in that exchange with the slave master, her mom was trying to protect them. And so she linked it generationally, how the idea initially was protection, but how that protection now can feel like oppression, because the mother, that's what they had to do.
Yeah.
So even what you're saying, like watching how you watched your mom cope, you watched her cope that way because those were probably the tools that she got from her mother, that her mother got, and she had no other way but to describe coping to you other than what she showed you.
Yeah. And it's crazy. And to realize that it really does come down generationally, and for you to have to be spiritually woke to like see it.
Yeah.
And most people don't see it. You just realize, like, when you get to the end of your life, you realize, oh shit, like, I'm not happy. I didn't do any of the things that I wanted to do. So
it's interesting because I've had these conversations like with my family, because every family has their stuff, right? Their generational stuff, how they communicate, what they do well, what they don't do well. And I remember telling my mom, like, I don't want to raise my children in a home where we can't talk about the difficult stuff. Because talking about the difficult stuff means something bad. I don't want them that. I want them to have a safe space to be able to communicate, because talking about difficult things doesn't mean that like we're a bad family or we're bad people or we're not good people. It's an opportunity for us to let go of things. And I remember the first, must have been, I don't even know how many years ago it was, but I had been holding on to for years. And this is probably the first time I'm actually saying it here like this, because I shared it on social media, the fact that my orthodontist had kind of inappropriately touched me when I was younger, when I had braces.
Oh, really?
Years ago when I was in high school. Oh yeah, for years. And I remember I held on to that for years, like,
oh my God,
4 years. And I remember one day, I don't remember, I was talking to my mom about something. She was over my house, and I literally just blurted it out and I started crying.
Oh my God.
And she was so, even a few years ago, I had to tell her, Ma, you can't feel guilty. Like, I didn't tell you because I didn't know what to do. I'm thinking to myself, is this happening? Is this like supposed to happen? I don't.
How old were you when it started?
I had my braces. I got my braces, I want to say maybe when we were in the 8th grade. So probably somewhere between 8th and 11th grade, which is when I graduated from high school.
Oh yeah.
Or like 9th and 10th grade. It was that window of those first couple of years. Cause that's when it's whenever I had my braces.
Okay.
And I would always remember just being anxious to go. And even at times being there and looking at the nurse, like, are you gonna like
do something? Like this is like this is not appropriate. Like, what the fuck is happening, right? And when you're young, you don't know what the fuck to do because
you don't know. You're like,
what is happening?
And it was so subtle. Like, it wasn't overt. It was very, very subtle, almost to the point where as an adult, you could be like, oh, well, that must have been a mistake, right?
Yeah.
But as an adult, when I look back on it, it happened every time I went. That was not a mistake.
Yeah.
That wasn't an accident. It wasn't a simple brush because you were brushing me every time.
So did he try to touch your privates or your chest area?
No. What he would do is because when you're sitting in the orthodontist chair, you're like back.
All the way back,
all the way back. And like my hands would be on my lap, and based on where his body was.
Oh, so he would brush
rub on different parts of my arm and on my hand. and a couple of times, like with, like, you know, when working, would just lean himself into.
Yeah. And you're like, excuse me, what the
But
fuck?
not right. But in my mind, like, I'm
Yeah.
like
You're like,
14, 15. I'm like,
yeah.
this doesn't, yeah. And a couple of times I would look over at the nurse, and I look back in hindsight and there was so much shame because it
Yeah.
was clear that I wasn't the only person he was doing it to.
Oh, okay.
Because he was a child orthodontist.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's doing it to everybody. Yeah.
And I remember many times I remember looking over at her and I could just feel like the shame and embarrassment. But I was thinking to myself, girl, like, I know I'm not crazy, but you're not doing anything. So maybe I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just when you think of the, like, to your point, the trauma that we've endured and those things that happen to us, it's so important for, like I said, that's one of my biggest things about being like spiritually woke, being
That's
aware.
one of your biggest secrets, that you had to be able to speak about and put it out there, but like, this is what happened to me, and set it free. So you're not holding on to it. You're not holding on to any sort of shame or whatever. And the fact that you are able to speak about it will help somebody else realize, oh shit, that shit happened to me too, and be able to
Because I felt
share
so
those
much
stories.
guilt as an adult. I felt so much guilt because I would always think to myself, oh my God, like how, and it's not my responsibility. And I've learned that now, but for many years it was, God, how many other people.
You feel ashamed too that it happened.
Well, that and the guilt of like, I didn't say anything. How many other people did this happen to? He was probably in practice for years long after I was finished. He was an older gentleman. So I also, for years, you know, that's what it was. I'm now remembering when I shared with my mom. Do you remember the big scandal at Penn State with Sandusky? There was a coach. There was a coach.
Okay.
I think it was Penn State, Sandusky. Like, he was like this world, like this amazing coach for this. I think it was, I want to say it was their football program. And a bunch of his previous students came out.
This is similar to the Olympics coach who molested all of his. All of them.
And I want to say this might have been like around 2003, 03, 04. If I'm thinking of the Sandusky stuff, that I think that was that time period when it came out. And I just remember watching some of the victims talking, and I would get more and more emotional. I would get more and more emotional. I would get more, and I'd already shared, I think at that time, the only person who I had told was my husband. And I just remember just getting more and more emotional, and my emotion went from like sadness to anger, because then I started getting angry at the kids, the people who didn't say anything, right? And I realized I had to let that go too, because they were no different from the individuals who finally did come out. Like, you just, it's such a weird thing.
It's a huge whirlwind of levels and layers and everything, and it's humongous. It's a huge thing to unpack. Oh yeah. But this forum that you have created to be able to have those conversations, like for me, even this, like, as much as I've thought I was free from it, it's still something that I was like more comfortable writing about, right? Because I did a post on it years back when the U2 movement started. I did a post on it. And I was like, it was the first time that I had articulated to anyone outside of my husband and my mom, and the transformational workshop that I did. And then I posted it, and people were like, oh my God, me too. Like the whole thing. But what I just did today, have never even done this before. To be able to speak about it on like a forum here. Verbally, yes, in this way. Yeah, it's a hard thing to be able to do that. That's why when I talk to you and be like, listen, I want to tell my story, but it's going to be a hard story, and I don't know how not to cry and do like the ugly cry of all of it, you know? So. Yeah, it's definitely, listen, we'll always forever be in the work. We'll forever, but I think, you know, your podcasts and forums like this and the workshops that I do,
it creates a safe space for people to be in the work, but it not feel like work.
Yeah, exactly. Like just having these conversations is therapy and healing, and will help somebody else who, listens in on these and be like, oh, well, they look like they're put together and they look like they're professionals. Wow, they went through that kind of stuff. Okay, well, if they went through it, then I can get through the stuff that I'm going through. Because really, that's how I was able to get through a lot of my struggles, is by, watching all of these shows and talk shows and hearing everyone's stories,
Yeah.
from like, any of these talk shows, from like Ellen to Oprah to, all of these stories, and
Yeah.
online and YouTube, and just realizing, like if they can go through those huge struggles, then I'll be okay as well.
Mm-hmm. And so it goes back to what we said in the beginning, community.
Community, yeah, exactly. See, we're always going full circle
We're
here.
always coming back full circle, right? That's what
Community,
it is.
communication,
Yeah.
and giving
Yeah.
people a safe space to, talk about these deep, hard things to talk about. And when I was talking to Jordan, I was able to, articulate a little more and more, of things that happened. Because really, like, if my manipulation and abuse started at around 3 years old
Hmm.
to when I was a sophomore in high school, the level of fucked up in my brain,
Yeah.
humongous. And for me to just wake up at 40
Hmm.
is just insurmountable.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful that I can unpack it all and be ready to, write the book and set it all out there and set it on fire.
Yeah. And set your kids free from the potential of passing, even if not that direct type of trauma, but the trauma of how you've coped.
Yes. And the trauma of how I would parent them as well.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yep. You should look her up, Dr. Joy Leary. I said that's not her her name anymore, because I know she got married, but
Oh,
her
okay.
work
Well, I'm
is
sure it'll come up on Google.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look her up. But yeah, I think
Dr. DeGrew.
DeGrew. Okay.
Yeah, DeGruy Leary. Mm-hmm. And her theory is post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Really
It's interesting to have these like scientific facts that reinforce how I felt, because I always knew, I was like, I'm passing this on to my kids because I can see it in their eyes, that hesitation, that like reservedness of it, because they're super reserved, and they're constantly even around family, they just kind of look at people like, and I'm like, but this is your family, you see my sister or you see my family every single year, you love playing with them. So that initial of like, who the fuck are you kind of look, and I was wondering, like, why are they so reserved? Well, they're getting it from my trauma, because before this, I would always look at everybody like, who the fuck are you? Kind of like,
Yeah.
are you friend or foe? I mean, like, that's
Mhm.
instinctual of like, can I trust you?
Can I trust you?
And I trust you. And that's been a full journey in my 6 years of life here.
And when you add it all together, yes.
46 years, can I trust you? And it's beautiful that I finally get to a place where I realize I have to be able to trust myself.
That's it.
Because I always put it on men. I can't trust you. You are going to do this to me, And being a person who's been violated, that's really hard. See, I'm gonna start crying.
Oh man, listen. That's real. That right there is real.
Yeah.
You're not alone. So many watching are like, that's me.
Yep.
That's me. Most of us, Linda, are walking through life not trusting people, That's one when I say I'm in the work for myself every day. That's one of those for me too. Because as soon as somebody if they even remotely look like
a foe, you're like, oh, I need to run away from you.
I'm like, oh
Yeah.
you know, and that, this is just such a beautiful space for people to be like, oh, I'm not crazy. No, none of us are crazy.
Yep.
None of us are crazy.
It's just a survival. It's how you were able to just cope.
To live.
Yeah.
To live. Not even thrive, just to like make it to the next day.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's 40 years of my life that I was just trying to get through to the next day.
Mm. So how have the 6
But now I'm living.
That's what I was about to say. How have the 6 years been?
It's been beautiful. Beautiful.
Mm.
I mean, obviously, it's a whole pile of shit that I had to walk through. It was a battlefield, it was war, but I had to get all my like equipment together and like my batting and my armor and my army gear on and to be ready to fight. And that's only when I was able to prepare myself that I was able to live, was to get ready to fight. And you're fighting for yourself, you know? So yeah, that's when I started living, is realizing, all right, I'm ready. I'm going all in.
Can your family see the difference from you before 40 and after 40? Have they noticed?
Yeah. I think everybody noticed. Because part of me, like, I think everyone realized, like, I just didn't seem authentically who I was. I was kind of living in this like world that didn't really show who I was. Like, it just didn't look like me, and everyone knows how I'm this like artistic, free kind of person who needs to express themselves. So I wasn't really living in that authenticity. So I think everyone could see it. I just didn't see it because I thought I had to live in this, checklist world.
Alternative universe.
Yeah, like I had to do all the checklists and follow all the rules of all of it and do what you're supposed to do, marriage, kids, work, career, and do all of those things. And I would come second. I would do everything for myself secondly when kids would go to sleep, but that's not living really. Like, you're fucking exhausted if you're just doing all of the stuff that you want to do when you take care of everybody else. Like, what time do you have for yourself, really? You're just putting yourself second.
And can you even really be fully present when you're doing all those things for other people? That was the thing that I caught for myself.
Yeah.
That even though I was doing all these things and putting everybody else first, when I was doing things for other people, I wasn't present.
Because you're just like kind of running a race, right? You're just like, here, just throwing shit out, right?
Yeah, it didn't have any substance. It didn't have any depth. It didn't have any connection or emotion because it was just a routine.
Yes.
Right? It was like, I was like just a robot without any, but the day that I started saying, yeah, I get to put some of these things first for myself. It made those other things that I was doing, it made them have more substance and emotion.
So did that happen for you when you started releasing those secrets and stuff and started realizing things more?
It did. I became okay with disappointing people.
Yes.
And before that, I wasn't.
Yes, that's a huge thing for me as well.
I became okay with, you know, saying no. It's funny, one of the workshops I facilitated a couple weeks ago, one of the women got up and she was like really emotional, and she was saying how, you know, this person's pulling on her, and you know, she's just talking like how what we're talking about. Everyone's pulling on her. And I said, what would happen if you said no?
Mm. She
What
was
would
like,
just
what?
happen if you
Yeah.
actually said no?
Yeah.
And she started to cry, and her concern was that people wouldn't love her, or they would leave her,
Yeah. Or they wouldn't like her, right?
or they wouldn't like her.
Yeah.
Um, and so I understood how she felt, because it was like I had to learn. And I told her, I said, sometimes you have to go to an extreme to find the balance.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea what it is to ride a bike until you fall off the bike.
Mm-hmm.
No one can tell you what gravity feels like until you feel it in your body.
That is true. That's
You know
true.
what I'm saying? Nobody can say, oh, gravity is going to feel like this.
No.
No, gravity is what you feel when you fall and you bust your ass on the ground, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I need to lean a little bit more to the right.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And I told her that's how you have to start learning how to disappoint people.
Mm-hmm.
Be okay with disappointing everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll find the balance
Mm-hmm.
where you're making a decision from your heart and not from obligation.
Yeah. And that's a huge thing that I had to come to. Like when I was ready to battle, like I had to be ready to be like, okay, no, and stand by the no. And that's a hard thing for me to be able to either say no or, you know, even
Mm-hmm.
just to ask for a divorce. Like that was a huge one, you know, for me
Mm-hmm.
to initiate something, to break up something, to stand for what I feel was like humongous,
Mm.
humongous. Because I felt like the world was gonna end, or I would unleash like anger and violence, you know. So I'd be like, all right, holy shit. Had to say no, and then like I felt like I would have to have like, you know, a whole slew of like reasons why, you know, I would have to defend it like a lawyer,
Wow.
you know, and not just because people always say like you have to be able to say no and not give the reasons and just be okay with it. And like me growing up, there will always have to be reasons. Why? What are the reasons? You can't just, there was always like, if you ever got reprimanded, you would have to sit there and give all the 5 million reasons why you just did what you did, when really you're just being a fucking kid and you didn't do anything wrong. Really, you didn't do anything wrong. You were being a kid. But no, being a kid was wrong. So you had to be reprimanded and sit there for hours. I would have to sit there for hours and think about what I did was wrong. And then you would have to have this like huge, like, I don't know, these like hairs of like, okay, I need to make sure everything that I do is not wrong, is perfect, to be the good girl and to follow all the rules and just, you know,
That's exhausting.
so exhausting. It's like a huge, like that's how I've been living my entire life.
Mm.
Entire life I had to live like that.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. So that's why 40 is fucking freedom. I don't give a fuck. That's why when Jordan asked, what is 40? 40 is freedom.
40 is freedom. I like that, because it is.
Yeah. From everything. From old patterns, from old secrets, and all of it. It's just gonna all
Yeah,
go.
because you start looking at the fact that, okay, I've lived 40 years, and I don't want to live the next 40 the way I've lived the last.
Yeah.
So something's got to be different,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to leave anything on the table. I want the rest to be all out every day, an experience of, and not every day is going to be perfect, but an experience of joy. And like, even when the shitty stuff comes up, to be able to say, it's not going to tear me down.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be okay with saying no, and be able to be okay with standing in like your own truth of whatever you feel, and not feeling like whatever you're feeling is wrong, you know, because like growing up in that kind of environment, everything you thought was wrong,
Mm.
you know. So to be where I am now is to be able to stand by, no, what I'm feeling, this is how I feel, you know, and it's not wrong.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think when you freed yourself, you freed a lot of other people probably too. So kudos to you, sis.
Thank you so much for being a part of this journey and chatting with me. And we didn't even need like a full topic. We just needed like one or two things.
Always.
It's like my
Always.
conversations with Schiavo. Like we can just bring up one thing, and then we'll just have a whole conversation about it.
Well, I hope I didn't disrupt any of the things you were interested in.
No, I'm
talking
interested in just getting to know what is happening with you now, and
Yeah.
you know,
I appreciate it because I'm on a journey now that I'm free
yeah,
to like, how do I take my own sense of freedom and empower and inspire other women to be okay with that too.
yeah. Like once you found your light, you're like, I need to shine it on everybody. Here, listen, I found the light. You
Yeah,
too.
well,
You too can.
myself. Listen, and how about I find my own light? I'm gonna help you find your light.
Yeah.
You don't even have to have my light. I'm gonna just tell you, girl, you got a light too.
You got a light.
Yes. I mean, listen, my name is Sunne-Ryse for a reason. So I like.
Exactly. And it's beautiful that you're in your light and you're in your purpose and helping all of these people. So I commend you and thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for always having me. I love our conversations. I think we just, are kindred spirits and we have a good time. And you gave me a little extra freedom today. So I'm grateful for that.
I'm grateful too. I'm so happy. And also when you do all of these like conversations with your couples, be beautiful to expand that eventually and like highlight them on like some sort of platform, because I've watched like Black Love.
Yes.
And they showcase all of these couples and I love hearing their stories. So
yeah, I love those stories too. And it's a great idea, something for my husband and I to really think about, because I think those stories are wonderful and they're inspiring. Our stories are really rooted in how couples got to us, right? And I think couples come to us because they are, they believe their relationship is in trouble. Whether they're thinking of divorce or whether they're just like, something's off and we need to course correct. But they come to us because there's an awareness that they're like, something isn't working. And we love that because it's the most human thing to do, but it's the human thing we most often don't do, which is ask for help.
Yeah. And it's beautiful that you can dissect it like a investigator and like figure it all out. Just by asking a couple questions. I can tell I can tell you too, like you're like, let me just ask you a couple questions and I can figure both of you guys out.
It's so true because it's funny when we do that, you can see like either the guy's eyes or like the other person's eyes, they get really big. They're like, I can't tell you how many times couples say, were you in our house yesterday? And we were like, nope, we were in our own house. That's how we know.
Yeah. I can tell that you guys would just like ask a couple questions and you're like, I figured it all out. Here's your problem. Let me tell you.
This is it. Don't keep doing this. This isn't going to work. Do that, not this.
That is hysterical. So what are some of your 7 tips that you are helping people realize how to transform their relationships?
Well, we have the first, so today is day 4. So folks got to check their email to see what day 4 is. But yesterday was, I made a joke. I said, don't assume. Are you being an ass? Right? Many times. Right? Because growing up, my father would always say, if he's like, oh, did you do such and such? And I would be like, oh, I assumed my brothers were doing it. And he was like, don't assume because you make an ass out of you and me.
Yeah.
And that played in my head. And so many times in relationships, you get into a conversation and you assume, like, you're like, oh, you did this because of this, or you didn't say this or because of this, but you have no fact. It's just all
assumption.
And that spirals into arguments. So one of the tips is like, don't assume. Don't assume. And in not assuming, another tip is be curious. Always be willing to ask questions. my husband and I, we tell couples all the time, we've been together 27 years. And I tell people, I still don't know my husband.
See, that's beautiful. Because like I've always said to people, like from my divorce, I learned you can't stop dating your husband or wife, your partner, whoever it is. Like that's my main lesson that I learned from divorce. Don't stop dating them.
Because you don't like, I met my husband when we were in our late teens, early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
He had a whole chunk of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we spent hours sitting together talking, he still wouldn't be able to tell me about every single detail of his childhood and adulthood.
Yeah.
And all of those experiences are at play in our relationship.
Mm-hmm. And he's still evolving as you get older.
And he's still evolving as he gets older. So that's why we tell couples, if you come into your relationship, because a lot of couples will say things like, oh, I know what she's going to do. I know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And we were like, actually, you don't.
No.
You can guess, but you don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're unwilling to like stay in the question and curiosity of your significant other and be willing to ask, why'd you do that? Why'd you say that?
Mm-hmm.
How come you feel that way?
Mm-hmm.
And give them the space to be able to articulate. So that was another one, being curious, don't assume,
Mm-hmm.
and like be willing to listen. So many times we talk more than we listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so a communication tip we tell people is like, just freaking listen sometimes.
Yeah.
And don't listen while in your mind you're preparing your argument or your rebuttal.
Yeah, that's what Will Smith says. He's like, you're just preparing your reaction to what you're going to say to what they're saying.
So what they're saying, be willing to just be like, I'm just going to listen. I'm going to process. And as opposed to when the person is done speaking, I'm going to immediately make a statement. Do the tip that I just said, ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that further?
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me understand? Can you give an example? Like those are ways that it builds communication in a relationship that allows for you to evolve, but also to create like connection and vulnerability and trust.
Yeah. And it's expansive.
Oh, because if you ask a question, you have no idea what you're going to get, which is like so beautiful because there's more information that you can learn in the moment.
Yeah.
Well, those were a few that we've done, and they're usually some of our common ones. One that we share with couples all the time is, slow to take offense, slow to give offense. Like that, we tell couples that should be your,
I should play that all the time. I think I really need to play that.
Slow to take offense, slow to give offense. Because how many times does someone say something?
Yeah.
And our first reaction is to assume the
and
worst.
And I'll instantly be offended. Instantly. Because I have this record playing in my head, that I need love and I need all of this. So if I don't get that instantly, I'll just be offended.
Yeah. And so we say slow to take it and also slow to give it. So if you're mindful of I'm slow to take it, like I'm not going to assume the worst about what you're saying. And because I'm not assuming the worst, I'm also not going to give you my worst. Because that's the natural reaction, right? When we're offended, our intent is like, I'm going to go and offend someone. I'm going to offend them now.
Yeah, like instantly, I think I text somebody, I'm like, what the fuck? Instantly, I wrote, what the fuck is that? I don't know what I wrote, but the first one was what the WTF. And my friend, I screenshot it and I sent it to my friend, and she's like, yeah, maybe you should write something else instead of WTF.
Yeah.
I was like, it's really bad. I'm an Aries. I'm full of fire. I instantly think and react. Add to that. And she's like, oh, she's like a Taurus with the cusp of Aries. So she's like, I only have a little bit of Aries, and I don't know how you can handle it because you're a full Aries. And I was like, yeah, why don't you add that plus a full dragon to that too? So like, I'm a crazy, fiery, hot mess is what I am. So I'll instantly be like, what the fuck does that mean? And then he'll be like, well, were you offended? I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah. As opposed to, you're asking questions, but your question was like rooted in offense. Yeah. As opposed to, the face of like, what you mean by that? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because what you mean by that is the same as what WTF, but it just it's not charged with offense.
Yeah, it's not charged with what the fuck. And so I charged him with what the fuck does that mean? And then he came back and explained himself. And so then I went into Google and Googled the word. I'm like, well, this is how I'm taking it. And this is what Google's telling me. So it's negative connotation. Like,
you
wow,
collected your research. We're like, well, this explains
this,
my response.
you use this word and this word is not a positive word. So it's like weird. So like I got the negative word. So I instantly became what the fuck. So then, but then like he came with like a positive text, but then like with the negative word under it. So then like it's like positive and negative. So like I'm like, how the fuck are you gonna be positive and nice and then use the negative word? And I'm like, I don't. The two things didn't mix.
It could just, well, the other way that it could be, which is where slow to take offense, slow to give offense, is that he might just not understand the true meaning of the word, and the context in which he used it wasn't charged with negativity.
Yeah, he doesn't see it as a negative word because he sees it as like just this is what the word means. It's simple.
Yeah, it's not charged with anything for him.
Yeah, like unfortunately, I'm constantly charged with this like shit baggage.
Yeah.
You know,
which is the lens at which you look at the word.
Yeah, it's totally me. I know it's me because I'm like, oh, it's that constant like needing of like reinforcement, love, and like if I don't get it instantly, I just think that, well, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why didn't you come with like peace and love?
To begin with,
just come with peace and love. That's all I want is peace.
And he's looking at you like, I did.
You just
my peace and love just didn't look the way you wanted it to look.
Yeah, that's exactly what he would say. It wasn't what you wanted me to say, even though I meant it that way. It's just not what you know. So I just don't hear it. Like I just need to clean off my glasses.
Or have more than one pair.
Yeah, that's true.
Because sometimes a WTF is needed, right? Yeah. Because it is a true WTF moment.
Yeah.
So it's just, I always say, just have more than one pair of glasses, that lenses which you're looking from.
Yeah, yeah.
We're given one, and then we think that that's the one that we use for our whole life.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the hammer analogy. I tell people in my workshops, we're given a hammer, and we used it to fix a problem in our youth, and it worked. Mm-hmm. But then we forgot that there were other tools in the toolbox. So now we're using a hammer to like fix the refrigerator. We're using a hammer to fix the window. And not realizing the hammer was for the nail.
That's it.
And that's it.
Yeah.
There's a wrench, there's an Allen wrench, there's an Allen key, there's like, but the hammer felt so good when we used it that we're like, oh, this is work for everything. And then we're just going around breaking shit with the hammer, not realizing like, yeah, no, hammer doesn't work for everything.
The hammer's not going to work for everything. No. Nor is the blowtorch.
Nope.
You know, nope.
Now the blowtorch is good for something, just not for everything.
Yeah. I love that. That's hysterical. I'm going to have to use my other tools in my little toolbox.
Yep. That's the goal. You want to keep adding things to your toolbox. Mm-hmm. And most of us are unwilling to add things to our toolbox because the tool that we have feels so freaking good. Even if we look like a menace with the tool sometimes. We're like,
yeah, you just don't realize. Like people are just like blindly just hammering shit away, right?
Yes, we all do.
Yeah.
And every now because it's easiest, right? You know how the hammer works. Mm-hmm. You got a good result from the hammer. So it's like, well, I got the result once. Mm-hmm. So this must be the thing I can use and it'll help me again. Mm-hmm. But then we're just attached to the emotion of it. We're not necessarily attached to the true result. We're attached to how the hammer makes us feel, not necessarily the results that we get.
Yeah. That is beautiful.
You got me all in here like like Sunne-Ryse is dropping all of the stuff. Yes.
Well, see, this is why these conversations are beautiful, because all kinds of gems are getting, coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's what you should put your hammer away. Put your hammer away.
I'm gonna have to implement a hammer into this like podcast.
just go like this.
Yeah, just a hammer, like a little gift, like a little hammer animation.
Yeah.
I gotta find one.
Going over and over again.
Oh my God, I love these. We have to do like a series of these.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'm down.
Yeah. Even if it's like quick little ones, because I know you're a busy woman, so we gotta do like little quick ones.
Little snippets.
Little snippets
Shorts.
of gems, daily gems.
Daily gems. We can break them up.
Or weekly gems, right? Weekly gems or whatever it
Well,
is.
I think in this time we probably got like some monthly gems in this one alone.
Yeah, and this one alone, we're just gonna break this all apart. This will be like
Part one, part two.
part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, like little shorts of all of these gems.
Relationships, dealing with trauma,
Hammers,
community, communication.
Yeah, we got a lot of gems here. See, this is beautiful. I love it so much, and it's been a pleasure. Anything else you want to add in there? Any other tips and
no, just
coming up?
Nope. People should just check me out at Doc Sunny Inspo on IG, Doc Sunny on Facebook. And, they can also go to my website, www.drsunnerys.com.
I love it. And your podcast is, how many do you have out now?
Well, I just have 3 snippets on my YouTube channel, and it's Wake Up with Dr. Sunrise.
Ooh,
So
I love it.
Waking folks up, keeping folks spiritually woke.
That sounds like a beautiful show.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to take some of this and we'll pop it over there too, so that everyone can check us both out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love it. Congratulations. I'm so happy that you got it out there, and we will chat again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, love.
Bye. Right? These are great things that we learn from each other. So every conversation, every story that we tell, just like my Artandhustle said, like every story will help, every story will heal. And it's the art of living. It's the art and hustle.
Yeah, look at you. Look at you on brand. On brand.
Also, I just want to say that our conversation was honestly one of the best conversations I've had, where I felt like I was more in tune to myself. So I thank you for that, because it was one of the perfect podcasts, because obviously I've just started this, right? But that conversation put honestly everything in alignment of how I was speaking and how I was articulating. I was like, wow, this sounds good. Like, I'm like, wow, I'm not that bad at this. Like,
not at all, kid. You're
right?
doing pretty good. From where I'm sitting, you're doing pretty good.